It's all too normal to want to spend time alone. It might be tempting to escape away from it all given the enormous strains of daily living. For some people, even a week-long vacation is insufficient, but for others, even a month or a year won't do. It may take decades in certain situations. One man did not settle with a week's leave from work. He felt he wanted to escape society and its constraints. Rather, he lived in hiding for over 3 decades. Upon his eventual discovery, his account was not believed by anyone. Welcome to USA Stories channel. Do not forget to subscribe and activate the bell button to receive all new updates. Now let's go to the story. Most individuals find that a week-long vacation to a tropical location is plenty when they decide to take a break from the worries of everyday life. People just need a little period of time to recover before getting back to their regular lives. But that was far from sufficient for North Pond hermit Christopher Thomas Knight. Christopher was raised around 1965 in Albion, Maine, and had a very typical childhood. Generally speaking, Christopher has never been good at relating to others, not even his classmates. He was more comfortable spending time by himself than with other people. Though he probably kept to himself, he was intelligent, and it appeared that his future was bright. But in 1986, just as everything in his life seemed to be falling into place, Christopher fled everything. He didn't even inform his family or his job what he was doing since he was so desperate to be away from civilization. In fact, not even he knew where he was heading without a map or compass. Christopher drove aimlessly for a while before getting out of his green Subaru and left the keys in the ignition. Equipped with a sleeping bag and a tent, he set off on his journey into the unknown. The only issue was that he had no prior experience camping or living in the woods. For his first 2 weeks, all he did was walk through the woodlands of Maine, but he soon learned how unprepared he'd been, particularly with regard to obtaining food. Berries were tougher to obtain than imagined, so he was compelled to consume them because he had no hunting weapons. Eventually, Christopher recognized that in order to get food when the occupants were away, he would have to break into surrounding cottages. He first largely stole from their gardens in the hopes that they would mistakenly believe that a wild animal had taken their produce. Christopher quickly had to contend with the challenging conditions of the Maine woods at the same time. He made the decision to spend the night in an empty cottage because his tent could no longer hold him. He made the decision to sleep outside from that point on, regardless of the weather, since he was too scared the owners would come back to discover him. Eventually, Christopher was able to locate a place to stay. He knew no one would ever just happen to stumble upon it because he was so far from the usual route. He soon started to completely accept the solitary life he had chosen for himself. He tried his best to be silent at all times after building a home out of concern that someone might possibly hear him. Christopher would frequently break into nearby cabins to take whatever food and beverages he could. He become a proficient and cunning thief over time. The man who used to install alarm systems for a living was unmatched by even the most sophisticated residences. He would sometimes steal extra keys so he could enter their house more easily the following time, but he would only dare to enter when he was positive that no one was there. Christopher always made careful to take only what he needed. Any overt movements would undoubtedly reveal him. He primarily drank Mountain Dew drink, chocolate bars, and snack cakes. In this manner, he could prevent himself from becoming too thin and giving in to the weather. But he had to keep his shelter intact, so he stole jackets, tarps, and blankets whenever he could. Eating wasn't his only worry. In addition to reading, he also stole magazines so he could tear out the pages, place them on the ground, and absorb any moisture. Christopher was sure to remove any signs that someone had broken into a house. He didn't smash windows, but he did take doors off and then put them back in place and fix them when he got all the materials he needed. This was the way of life for over 30 years. But eventually, despite Christopher's best efforts to be exact, the residents of the residences started to discover several damages to their properties in addition to missing items. Christopher quickly started breaking into houses after dark. Despite hearing odd noises surrounding their homes in the evenings, the residents of North Pond, Maine, were never able to identify a real invader. Even if they would simply go back to sleep, they would discover haphazard items missing from their houses. The majority of individuals called the police to report missing different products, such as junk food, books, magazines, jeans, boots, radios, and batteries. At that point, the police concentrated all of their efforts on identifying the intruder. Before long, he was being called by a variety of names. These included the stealthy Yeti, the Loch Ness Monster of Maine, and the North Pond Hermit. Everyone in North Pond soon had security cameras installed in their houses, but it seemed like he could always get in and get away with it. Then, at last, the police made their big break when Christopher made the decision to break into a country summer camp. It was an obvious choice because the camp was stocked with all the food and tools one would need to survive in the wilderness, and there was little chance that anyone would notice anything missing. However, Christopher was unaware that he was being pursued by the police. Sergeant Terry Hughes oversaw the facility and had a strategy in place to apprehend the North Pond Hermit. He put in secret food lines, military-grade motion sensors in the kitchen, and industrial-grade floodlights. Sergeant Hughes acted quickly on April 4, 2013, when the alarm began to sound. He entered the kitchen expecting to see a masked intruder, but instead he saw a middle-aged man who appeared normal. Christopher dropped to his knees and refused to answer any questions when Sergeant Hughes asked for the criminal's name. As the detectives were taken aback by his account, Christopher started to talk. Christopher said that he had only spoken to 2 hikers who had been lost in the Maine woods for the previous 27 years. What was it, he said? Just say hello. Christopher entered a guilty plea to 13 counts of theft and break-in at Kennebec County Superior Court on October 28, 2013. What really surprised many, though, was that he was only sentenced to 7 months in prison for his crimes, which included an estimated 1,000 break-ins. He was also sentenced to 3 years of probation, weekly court appearances, and $1,500 in reparations for each of his victims. In addition, the judge mandated that throughout his jail term, he participate in a program for those with mental health disorders. In addition, Christopher tried to get in touch with his family, whom he had left behind years ago without even saying goodbye. His brother extended an employment opportunity to him upon his eventual release. Given his extraordinary tale, it was just a question of time until a book was written about him. American writer Michael Finkel, who interviewed Christopher while he was still jailed, recently authored the book The Stranger in the Woods. At the conclusion of his voyage, Christopher had virtually lost his identity. "I became more perceptive when I was alone," he said. "The tough part is that I lost my identity when I applied my expanded perspectives to myself. There was no one to perform for, no audience, and no need to define who I was. I lost my relevance." Although Christopher's motivation for seeking such intense seclusion may never be known, his tale is intriguing. Fortunately, he will repay everyone whose homes he broke into throughout the years. Talk about this amazing tale with your friends. Please remember to subscribe to our channel, give us a thumbs up, and turn on the notification bell so you won't miss any of our videos. If you enjoyed the tale, the next video that plays on your screen will probably move you too.